Hello, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. I hope that you are fed and caffeinated. We're really excited to dive into this topic of AI with you today. My name's Madison. I am COO for the Center for Public Sector AI. We're a nonprofit that's focused on helping state leaders make good decisions on emerging tech. And reflecting on our work over the past year and a half, I think there's one thing we've learned is that having a good AI policy isn't enough, and what really matters to all of us is what happens when policy meets practice on the ground. And so I'm so excited to have this panel with us today, leaders from 3 states who are really leading the pack and setting the pace for the country on AI governance and implementation. So we're going to have a great discussion, but to get started, I thought Nishant, Josiah, and Nikhil, we could start by just having you guys do a quick round of introductions, and then we'll dive in. And Nishant, you want to kick us off?
Sounds great. Thanks, Cass. Hi, everyone. I'm Nishant. I lead AI enablement efforts for the state of Maryland. Good to be here with you guys.
And I'm Josiah Raiche. I'm the Chief Data and AI Officer from the state of Vermont and do data and AI things as well as constituent engagement and like all your online experiences for Vermonters.
Hey, I'm Nikhil Deshpande. I'm the Chief Digital and AI Officer with the great state of Georgia. I run digital services teams and also now leading the AI program.
Awesome. Thanks all. OK, so first question to dive in. AI is top of mind, I think, for just about everyone in the room. And what we really want to dig in today, as we said, is what does it look like to put policy into practice on the ground? And when we look around the country, there's diverging paths. States are taking a variety of different approaches to this. Your states are leading the pack. Can you give us a little flavor for what's working well on the ground and what's hard and what that means for the road ahead? And Nikhil, do you want to start?
Yeah. It's been quite a journey, right? So like all of us who woke up realizing the potential of AI, specifically Gen AI, about 2 or 3 Novembers ago, we had to first deal with the conversation about, and the challenge was just to make sure the organizations and people rallied around the idea that AI is going to be part of our day-to-day going forward. I see quite a lot of folks up here. Maybe just do a raise a hand, or like show of hands. We're like, who is excited about AI and looking forward to working with it on a day-to-day basis versus who is fearful? Yeah. So those were the conversations, like from a challenge perspective. So I think instead of just jumping into showing them things that worked and seemed like magic, we wanted to make sure that they all came on board and understanding what's happening. Mm-hmm. So what really worked with us was having that dialogue. Now, be it a roadshow of going from agency to agency and talking about all of these things, but making sure that we understand what it means, where are we going to be as individuals, how is AI going to affect me personally versus my organization, and where do we see ourselves with AI amongst us in 3 or 5 years? So I think that was like our core challenge. Actual implementation and working on certain pilots relatively seemed like, OK, something we can do, but making sure we build that trust and making sure we have a program and have an AI implementation that it's not just trust within our state organizations, but also with our constituents. We want to make sure that anything that we do is equitable, is inclusive, and is absolutely transparent.
Yeah, and Georgia has started an AI lab. Can you give us a 30 seconds on that?
Absolutely, yeah. So moving past the governance and all the guardrails, we want to make sure that we have a proving ground. And a lot of the individual agencies who otherwise have a risk-averse posture in trying out emerging technologies, we wanted to create a safe space for them to experiment, truly by the notion of failing is OK, but as long as you try it, let's try, we make sure, and if you have a good reason not to move forward, that's fine, but if there is a chance that we can scale, that's absolutely, so that work happens at that lab. So we partnered with a series of about 19 industry partners who are, of course, experts in the implementation of AI, but our role is to have those conversations, identify opportunities, and then work on pilots. And if that scales up, then we actually have succeeded.
That's great. Thanks, Nikhil. Josiah, tell us about Vermont.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think has worked really well in Vermont is our focus on empowering state employees to use AI as a power tool. And the reason we articulate AI usage as a power tool for information workers is it keeps people in the right mental frame to be successful as they're implementing AI. So instead of having the idea that we're going to build autonomous robots that do swaths of our work or replace our workforce, we're instead talking about what does it look like to give somebody a tool that lets them zoom out from the mechanics of doing the thing to thinking about the outcomes. What does it look like to have a power tool that's designed for a specific purpose and is being used in the context of a human process to make that work better? And the analogy I like to use is like if you imagine you're putting trim around a door or a window, right? Like when I do that, I'm not that handy. Like I'm thinking about let's not hit my thumb, right? As I'm swinging a hammer, things like that. A good power tool lets you instead, like, let's say like a nail gun or something, you go chunk, 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 right? Much easier. So you can think about, is this corner tight? Is this working well? If you go build a window trimming robot, it's probably going to break all your windows, right? That's not going to be a successful model. So articulating to our staff, let's do this with power tools. Let's use AI in those kinds of ways. It makes them much more comfortable, helps them to envision what is the drudgery, like what is the part of my job that like I think about the mechanics of and it takes a bunch of cognitive load and doesn't really add any value. Instead think about big picture. And so the way that we did that was we actually did a bunch of trainings on here's ways that you can use freely available AI tools back in that November when we all woke up and went, wow, this is a new world. So we did trainings. I gave them examples of things that work well. I gave them really like silly examples of things that look like they work well and actually don't, like create the recipe for Eggs Benedict in a style that's suitable for the Federal Register.
It's a fantastic prompt.
Yeah, and it looks perfect, and it's completely useless. And so I use examples like that to show our staff, like, you can't use the quality of the presentation to judge the quality of the content in an AI era. So we show things like that and then said to our employees, go use it. You can't use any sensitive information, but go explore what you can do, how you can do your job better with AI. And the other guidance I gave them was what I call the VT Digger test. That's our local investigative news organization. If they knew that you were doing this with AI, what type of story would they write? And supervisors have really good calibration for what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. When you say power tool, investigative journalism, how do you want to use AI today? And like that framing has enabled us to empower employees to be creative, to figure out how they can use AI, and also, not news stories about how Vermont is doing things they oughtn't to be.
Those are some great analogies. How about what's going on in Maryland?
I mean, +1 to everything from Nikhil and Josiah. I feel like every time I talk to them, I just copy and paste what they're doing and just apply it in Maryland. No, I think the problem statement that we're trying to solve for in Maryland is how might we empower our agencies to adopt AI responsibly, ethically, and productively to improve constituent outcomes. And we put out the strategy earlier this year, and it really has 5 parts. The first is maturing our AI governance capabilities. This is starting from ground zero and then understanding what the maturity model looks like there and actually getting this stuff operationalized, moving beyond words on paper and actually integrating it as part of an intake process that is centralized across the state. Second is building out our data foundations. There's a sort of graveyard in enterprise AI adoption of proofs of concept that sort of can't go anywhere, that can't be put into production. And a lot of that is because of sort of weak data environments, no data governance, bad labeling, no sort of real conversation on how to leverage synthetic data or not. And so, we have a whole sort of work stream led by our chief data officer on sort of building out these data foundations. The third is experimentation and adoption. And, we have lots of different approaches to this, from sort of hackathons and trainings to to making tools available across the state, through to what are the mechanisms that are actually making it tough for agencies to procure tools. So we're working on a fit-for-purpose procurement pathway that's focused on proofs of concept. The fourth is building our AI IQ, for lack of a better word. So this is training, this is helping the workforce, both writ large, but also by specific job types, understand how they can leverage AI responsibly and ethically in their specific areas. And it's also partnerships. So this is partnering with academic institutions and vendors and civil society to sort of ensure that we're keeping an ear to the ground about what should we be adopting and how. And finally, we're doing a set of a dozen critical sort of deep dives in critical domains. So this is like AI in healthcare and K-12 education, in cybersecurity, and these were all sort of put forth by legislation. And so each of the relevant agencies, so for example, Department of Commerce focused on AI and economic development, and the idea here is to really gear strategy around AI in those specific areas that is predicated on Maryland's specific environment, like our data, our trend lines, understanding that in depth so that rather than being sort of hand-wringy about what automation means for the workforce, we have a much better understanding of how it might be impacting that over the coming years and can do something about it. So those are sort of how we're approaching it, and that started bearing some fruit. The one sort of additional thing I'll add to that is that this is a moment of incredible hype around AI. There's incredible promise, but incredible hype, and we should all be leveraging that hype and this sort of like press release pressure that comes from that in order to fix the basics. These are like a good privacy program, an API strategy, your data infrastructure, a good third-party risk management program. All of these things that maybe weren't as sexy prior and didn't get the attention or love that they could have. But now with the eye of Sauron sort of on these sorts of things, we found some success in sort of shining that onto some of these areas to say that, well, in order for AI to work, we have to improve this. So that's another sort of like meta commentary.
I love that. That resonates so much. And I think it's a good segue to our next question, which is just the technology is moving so fast. So as we think about like, where's AI going to be a year from now? And how do we prepare state teams for a world in which we go from pilot to AI being baked into everything they do and the way they interact with systems and customers every day? What's one thing each of you are doing to help prepare the workforce for that AI of the future? You want to start, Nikhil? Sure.
Yeah. So I think just to piggyback on what Nishant was talking about, using AI as really a catalyst to have some of these long-lasting, kind of like challenges that we have been dealing with as far as service design, as far as like how data is being, neglected for many cases. Like this is a great opportunity, and going forward, I mean, you don't need any of us to tell you that AI is going to be existing in pretty much anything and everything that we touch, whatever version of AI. The key would be to make sure that we have a informed workforce. We have folks that can actually understand what we are doing, how can we partner, how do we procure technology that has AI in it, and how do we keep our data secure? How do we make sure that any of the decision making that happens as just nothing but an augmentation to a human who makes the decision and not any AI system that makes a decision. So I feel like going forward, as long as we have these guardrails in place, regardless of the technology changes and regardless of what happens around the ecosystem with the new promise of AI, I think we'll be okay. And one of the things that I do feel like, again, from a workforce perspective, is that if you're not just seeing like a large, I would say, sea change in the way technology is changing, but also there will be a huge change in the way our careers have been defined. So if you are at a point where you can actually define a junior person's career getting into your organization, I think this is a great opportunity to kind of figure that out, like how do they coexist with AI? It's not just enough to say, like, whatever a junior person is doing, now AI can do it. But then, we have to have some pathway in. So I would say when we look at the future, like, those are some of the things that we really kind of have to prioritize. And we want to make sure that we pave a path for our upcoming talent. But also at the same time, we want to make sure we keep our constituents, our citizens secure and safe. And again, the workforce just needs to be ready to be dealing with some of these emerging technologies.
Absolutely.
Any lawyers here? Okay. So normally, as a technologist, my relationship with our legal team is sometimes exciting. So, but when we were first having conversations about AI, it was like, in 3 or 4 years, all of our employees are going to be using AI. And we need them to be ready for that, because AI doesn't throw up a little red error box when something goes wrong. AI just starts making stuff up. And so as we were thinking about how do we prepare the workforce to operate in these kind of new modes of collaborative working, of like human-machine collaboration, things like that, the lawyers were like, well, you need a pro forma declaration. And I went, what in the world? How's that going to solve my problem? But they were right. So what we have trained our staff to do, and this was like a super practical thing, is when you're using AI tools, and our internal ChatVT tool actually puts this on the end of your response, it says, this content was generated with the help of artificial intelligence, which AI you used. It was it reviewed, and it's accurate, and it represents the intent of the person who generated, like it puts your name in. And that, having that on there, that's like at the bottom of the whatever thing you wrote with AI, makes you go, oh, did I actually check that? Did I actually review, and is that actually correct? And that was like a very easy thing, like super easy to implement. Doesn't take a whole lot of training, but just having that on there makes staff more aware of how AI works and how it's going to fail, and prepares them for the future.
Yep. Yeah, this stuff's moving quickly. And so, like, the way that we've done policy for a long time, which is like a big bang, here's a policy that covers everything, you put it out, and then you revisit it a few years from now, and you make some updates in that time, that's just not going to work in this space. So we are trying to find ways to shorten that feedback loop on policy and make that much, much more rapid. One approach that we're taking is something that we're calling governance cards. It's not really the right way to talk about it. We need a better name, but the concept is something that's lighter than policy, heavier than conditional approvals. It's like a 3 to 5 pager on sort of AI use cases that have proven ROI in 100 different places. These are things like AI in translation and transcription services and coding assistance and general productivity tools, external-facing chatbots, and these are the do's and don'ts, approved software lists, the product considerations, pricing considerations, things like evals, what kinds of evals are effective to leverage in order to make that use case work for you. The idea is that very rapidly an agency or users across the state can leverage these governance cards to sort of start leveraging those use cases very quickly. So that's something we're launching very soon. I'm very excited about those, and it'll be sort of like live documents, something that is continuously updated, the T's and C's, the capabilities themselves, and so hopefully this is something that is like a faster version of policy.
Thank you. We are sadly almost out of time. I think you can tell we could continue to talk about this for hours, so I hope you will come find these folks throughout the conference and learn more about what they're doing. But just in our final moment here, maybe just one rapid-fire piece of advice you have for states who are earlier, governments who are earlier in their journeys. What should they be focused on, or what's one lesson you've learned that would be valuable to those folks who are just starting?
Yeah. AI is not a silver bullet. So any implementation, any plans that you have, make it very intentional. And there is no reason to not be thinking about our end users or how any decision is going to be affecting a human. Again, you probably heard the trend that anything that comes out of AI, think of it as a draft, not a doctrine. End of the day, we are the ones who should be making decisions. So truly just use AI as an augmentation tool, and don't be afraid of it. Play with it.
I'd say think about scale. When you do your first one, when you do your pilot, whatever it is, you kind of create ideal conditions around that. And that's not how real life is, right? You're not just building AI solutions for your early adopters. Your first few might be, but then after that, you're building AI solutions for your whole workforce, including the people who really don't want to use their phone. So make sure that you're thinking about that type of thing as you're building tools that may be feasible to use for the whole workforce.
I see we're at 0. Don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of people have put out policies and have great approaches to things. There's 50 different states doing 50 different things. Folks like Cass run networks where folks working on this space can get together and talk about what they're doing. So just dust stuff off the shelf that's been working elsewhere and take that up rather than spending a lot of time reinventing it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you all for being a part of this.